Welcome to The Planted and the Poured, a space for real conversations about life as it is while we're becoming who we were created to be. Can I ask you a question? Where did you learn what a healthy relationship looks like? Whether you're married, dating, single, hoping to be married someday, we've all built an understanding of relationships from somewhere. So my husband and I celebrated our 6th anniversary last weekend, and I know that's like being married for 5 minutes. But before we got married, people gave us lots of advice. Don't go to bed angry. Marriage is hard. Communication is key. And so the last week, I've been in my feelings, just thinking about our life together and our relationship. I've known my husband since 2012. And so I thought I would do an episode about the things that I've learned about marriage. So before I got married, I think I had this idea that marriage was about finding the person who completed you. If you've ever watched Jerry Maguire, he delivers this speech and he says, "You complete me," and it's magical. And looking back on that as an adult, I see lots of flaws, but that's kind of where I've developed this idealized version. You find this person and it's just like they're your soulmate and it's great. And while I absolutely still believe that marriage is a beautiful gift, after being married for 6 years, I realized that marriage did not complete me, and it also didn't make me someone else. For me, it revealed more clearly of who I was. It challenged me, it stretched me, it showed me the parts of myself that I still need to work on. It taught me how to love someone when things were not convenient. It showed me how to better communicate and forgive and to ask for what I need and how to become a better teammate. And so when I look back over the last 6 years, I realized that the biggest lessons, at least that I've learned, weren't necessarily the cliche advice that you hear over and over. And so today I want to share 6 things for 6 years that marriage has taught me. And not because I think I have it all figured out, because again, we've been married for like 5 minutes, but I think sometimes it's helpful to hear stories and insights from people who are still in the middle of learning. So maybe in 50 more years, I'll come back and say I have it all figured out, but right now I don't. So anyway, the first lesson that I've learned from being married is that marriage doesn't thrive on love only. It thrives on initiative and effort. And so one of the biggest things I've learned is that, at least for me, taking initiative is one of the ways that I love to not only give love, but also receive love. So I am a type A planner to the T, but as much as I love to be in control of things because I know that if I do it, it's going to get done, in my view, correctly, I've also learned that I love when my husband takes initiative. So as much as I love planning the dates and the fun things that we do together, when my husband does take the initiative to plan a date for us or arrange something so that I don't have to do it, to me, that screams, "I love you." And this is something that I've had to learn with myself because I like to take control and plan things. I needed to take a step back in some ways and allow my husband to take that lead. Because if I'm always leading everything, then it's easy for somebody to sit back and say, "Oh, she's got it." And so communicating that, yes, while this is my favorite thing to do, I also like when you do it too. I've also learned that initiative looks different. Sometimes initiative looks like, oh, we're going to plan this and I'm going to plan this. And initiative could also be, I noticed that these clothes were not folded, and so I folded them. I noticed this wasn't clean and I cleaned it. This is where my husband thrives. He will notice fingerprints on the microwave that I don't see. He's great for if he gets home from work earlier than I do, or if I have a really long day, I will come home to the load of laundry that I let sit for 3 to 7 business days, and it's all folded and I just have to put it away. So I've also needed to recognize that initiative doesn't always look like my type of initiative. It can look a lot different. The second thing that I've learned is that communication is not about winning, it's about understanding and being understood. So I love to ask people who have been married, what do you think is the most important thing? I love to ask people this. And almost every single person I think that I've talked to will say communication. But they say communication and they just leave it at that. And while that's helpful to be aware of, I think that it needs to go deeper. So, in my experience, what I've learned about communication is that you can listen to respond or you can listen to understand. And those are two completely different conversations. So, it's important when you are communicating, yes, you want to communicate clearly. You want to communicate respectfully because you can just say, look, I'm communicating, but communicating could be screaming at the other person. So I think calm and clear communication is very important. But I also think the listening component is just as critical because a lot of times we listen to the person who's telling us something, and then we are just preparing a counter argument in our head. And we're not really listening to them and empathizing with them. That being said, when we're communicating clearly, I think it's also important to help the other person empathize. So instead of saying, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do this, communicating when this happened, this is how I heard it. So sometimes I will do this with my husband and I let him know when you ended that text message with a period, I went from 0 to he's going to divorce me. And usually it's not quite that dramatic, but I have my days. But I think when I explain to him the crazy gymnastics that my mind does when something happens, he understands how nuts I am. And then he's like, okay, now I understand why you reacted that way. Because a lot of times I'll say, when you say this, this is what I hear. And then again, on the other hand, being able to receive that without being defensive and trying to be a little bit more empathetic, I think is really important. The third thing that I have learned is that the best marriages practice before they need to. And this is something I'm pretty proud of myself for because we've been practicing things since before we were even engaged. I read books about marriage. My mom thought I was crazy. She's like, why are you reading a book about marriage? You're not even engaged. But I said, well, when I do get engaged, I want to be ready. And so this can look like a few different things. First of all, as I said, I am the planner. I was tired of having fights with my husband when he was my boyfriend about the plans that we had. I would tell him multiple times. I would text him about it, so it was in writing, and he would still forget that we had made plans to do stuff. So, shout out to TimeTree. That is the calendar app that I use. It was recommended to me by a friend who said this also saved lots of fights for him. And so it's a shared calendar. You can use any calendar, Google Calendar, it doesn't matter. I like TimeTree because it's separate from Google, and I use Google at work, and I just like to have things separate. So that app is a shared calendar so that we can plan events, and I can set it so that you are reminded of the event basically as often as you want. So I have it set to, I believe, a week before the event, the day before the event, and then an hour before the event. And it has definitely saved us some arguing. So that was before we even got engaged. Then another thing that I did was before we got married, we did not live together before we were married. And we sat down and talked about what expectations we had going into living together and being married, because we come from two different families. In my house growing up, I had a parent who worked and a parent who stayed at home with us. And so the division of labor looked very different. My mom was in charge of basically almost everything related to us, our school, our homework, the cooking, the cleaning, things like that. Whereas my dad was the breadwinner and would take care of the outside and washing the cars and taking them for maintenance and things like that. And so my husband's parents were both working parents. So I wanted to make sure that coming into this, we had the expectations of who was going to do what, who's going to take out the trash, who's going to cook every night, who's going to clean up every night, things like that. And I think that helped us set a really good foundation so that we didn't have unmet expectations that were not even spoken about. So I think that was helpful. And then the last thing I'll say that I am very happy that we did was going to see a counselor. So we started seeing a counselor after we were engaged, but before we got married. And we meet with her once a month. It's online. And just to check in. And for us, I mean, obviously this was my idea. My husband was not as thrilled to be doing this, but he was agreeable. And now after more than 6 years of seeing a counselor, every time we do it, we always feel better afterwards, even if we're tired and like not really into it going in. And I would really recommend this for anyone who has it within their means. Ours is covered by insurance. And we will sometimes talk about things that are coming up that could be potential stressors or challenges in our marriage. We talk about things that we have gone through or are going through that can kind of be some pain points. And other times we will revisit an argument that we had, and not to rehash things over and over again, but to look at it from a clearer perspective when we're both calm and over it, and then kind of review the steps that got us there so that we can recognize the warning signs and maybe choose a different direction. So, big fan of counseling. And so, again, I think really healthy marriages and even any relationships will practice before they need to. You brush your teeth every day. You don't wait till you get a cavity to brush your teeth. You are being proactive about it. And so I think that's really important in a relationship, any relationship really, but especially a marriage, because you are so closely intertwined. You're seeing this person every day. You don't want to get sick of each other. So the fourth lesson that I've learned is that selflessness doesn't mean silence. I used to think that being a good wife meant never asking for anything. And at the beginning of our marriage, I was very afraid to admit when I needed help because I felt like a failure. So, for instance, with cooking dinner, we agreed that I was going to be the one that cooks the dinner because my husband's culinary skills are limited, and then he would clean up. And so if I ever came home from work and was too tired to cook, I would feel guilty. I would feel like I was a bad wife. And my husband did nothing to make me feel this way. It was just something that I put on myself. And I don't know if it was because my mom cooked every night. But again, the division of labor was a little bit different. So I remember one night I worked all day and then I coached cheerleading. So I had a game and then it ran late because kids got picked up late. So I got home late, and my thing is I like to take a shower before I cook dinner. I wash the day away, and then I can come to preparing the food with a more relaxed mindset. So I was cutting it close. I wanted to eat at a reasonable hour, and it was coming up on, a little after 6 o'clock. So I'm like, let me jump in the shower real quick, and then I will cook, and hopefully we can eat by 7. And I get in the shower and I realize that there is no wash rag in the shower. We had washed the wash rags and towels. So I'm already wet. I get out of the shower to run to the other room to grab a wash rag. And now this is just cutting into my time. So I'm really trying to rush now. So I come back to get back in the shower and I'm rushing and I slip. I almost fall. I grab on something and I make it into the shower without dying. But that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. So my husband comes in the bathroom and I am sobbing under the shower stream. And he was like, "That's it. You're not cooking tonight. I'm going to go get takeout. I will be back." Didn't even ask me what I wanted to eat, just left. And he was like, "I will take care of it." And I still remember that. That was a few years ago because, again, this kind of goes back to the taking initiative thing. But it really taught me, because we talked about it after, and he was like, "You are not a bad wife if you don't cook every single night. It is okay if you are tired. It's okay." And really from that day, and I'm still working on it, but from really then on, I got better at communicating when I needed help. Just because we had agreed that I would do the cooking doesn't mean that I'm not allowed to ask for help when I'm cooking something that is a little bit more involved, or if I had a long day, it's okay. And so I've learned that, yes, there's that saying that when you get married, you die to yourself. And I agree with that to a point. Yes, you have to be less selfish. It's not just about you. You have to consider your partner. But that doesn't mean you have to be silent about what you need, especially if you're overwhelmed. So, the fifth lesson that I've learned is that grand gestures do not build a marriage. Now, I love a grand gesture. If you've ever watched This Is Us, I love a Jack Pearson grand gesture. I love to do grand gestures. I have learned, though, that that is not what builds a marriage. Nobody makes a post about your spouse taking out the trash when you really needed help. I've learned that over the course of the 6 years of our marriage, when I look back at things, yes, I look back on the big moments and the surprises and the gift that my husband got me that I had mentioned offhand months before. All those are great, but the marriage that we have is built on things that we do that are less exciting. For instance, I had gotten a new water bottle and my husband cleaned up and I had gone to bed. So then the next morning I come down and I'm looking for my water bottle and I'm looking for it, can't find it. I open the fridge and it was in the fridge completely filled for me. Didn't say anything about it. He just did it. It's those little conscious choices like that over a long period of time, in my opinion, that really build a life together. We love hosting a party, and some of my best memories in our marriage are preparing for one of these parties. So we host Christmas, and I wanted to make gnocchi pasta from scratch, and you make that by hand, and it's a very long and involved process. So my husband and I had an idea that every time we finished a tray of gnocchi, which took, a while, we would do a shot. And we had the best time. We were laughing so hard by the end. It has become a core memory, for me at least, in our marriage. My sister-in-law, we threw her a party a couple months ago, and we were learning how to decorate a cake. All of us together, we were messing up, laughing. We were using Dazzle dust. And so these are just the little things when we're working towards a common goal, when we do little things with great love for each other. That's really what builds the marriage. And again, the grand gestures are great, but a foundation that's a lot stronger is made up of the little consistent things. The sixth and final lesson that I've learned is that compatibility is not enough. It's a shared direction that really matters. So, when you're dating someone, you naturally focus on the things that you have in common. Oh, you enjoy the same activities, you laugh together. And those things really, really matter. But the bigger question is, are we moving in the same direction? So, one of the biggest areas that this matters in is finances, because money is rarely just about money. It's about security and priorities or generosity or freedom or the kind of life you want to have. And so, two people can have completely different personalities, but still have a strong marriage if they are aligned on the things that matter most. This could also be with faith. For us, at least, the finances we are still working on becoming better aligned, because at our core, we agree with certain things to spend money on and then we differ on other things. But for us, our faith has been an anchor. And again, not because we do things perfectly, but we have this foundation that we're trying to work for in our faith. So if you're listening and you're not married, I still think that these things are something that are worth thinking about even now, and not just asking, do I enjoy being around this person, but do we have similar values? Can we handle conflict in a healthy way? Do we agree on what matters? Do we want the same kind of life? Because chemistry can bring two people together, but having the same values is what helps you stay together. So before we wrap up, I thought I would do a little fun rapid fire. I'm going to react to some of the most common pieces of marriage advice. So the first one is never go to bed angry. While I see the value in this, I kind of disagree. I agree with not avoiding the issue, but I think sometimes the best thing you can do is to get some sleep and then have a conversation when you're both thinking clearly. So I don't fully agree with that. Somebody told me instead of never go to bed angry, they said never leave the building. You go in different rooms, outside, inside, but don't leave the building until you've resolved whatever it is. And I think that's better advice. The second thing people say is marriage is hard. I agree with this. However, I think it needs a little caveat or clarification. I don't think a healthy marriage should feel hard every single day. Life is hard. Caring for a sick parent is hard. Financial stress is hard. Raising kids is hard. But if you've chosen someone who's committed to growing with you, your spouse should not feel like the hardest part of your life. So yes, it is hard to do these things in general and do them with someone else, but I don't think every part of this should feel hard. I think that would be a little bit of a red flag. The next one is never stop dating your spouse. I firmly agree with this. However, a date doesn't necessarily mean you are going out and spending all of this money. Sometimes dating looks like a fancy dinner. Sometimes it looks like eating ice cream outside after you do the dishes. I think what makes it a date is the intentionality. So, for instance, last week, my husband and I cooked dinner together. He grilled the burgers and I made the sides, but then he put on the lights on the patio and lit a fire, and we sat around the fire after dinner. And that made it feel a little bit more romantic than just a regular dinner where we're sitting at our kitchen island when we're both exhausted. Happy wife, happy life. Hard disagree with this, but I see where it's coming from. I'd rather have a healthy husband and a healthy wife than one person's happiness being everybody's responsibility. So I agree that you want to make your spouse happy and that makes the marriage happy. That's great. But I don't think it should just be on the wife. And I also don't want to promote codependency either. And the last one I will do is marriage is 50-50. I disagree with this. I think as it says in the Bible, you should be equally yoked. Again, you're going in the same direction, but it depends on the day. Sometimes marriage is 80-20, sometimes it's 20-80. And I don't think the goal should be equal effort every single day. I think it's both people giving what they can in the season that they're in. When my mother-in-law was sick, my husband was not giving me, 50% because he really needed to lean on me in that season. And so I was, quote unquote, doing more, but that was the season that he was in. Whereas when I went back to teaching in person after COVID, my job was so stressful and I was crying all of the time because the kids were crazy. And so I really needed to lean on him, and he was pulling more of the weight. So I don't think it's going to be 50-50 all of the time. So if there's one thing that 6 years of marriage has taught me, it's that a good marriage is not built on finding the perfect person. It's two imperfect people who keep choosing each other, who keep trying to grow and giving grace to each other. And so I hope wherever this finds you, whether you're married or single, I hope you could take something out of this and maybe learn from some of my mistakes or take note of some of the things that I did that have been helpful. So thank you so much for listening. If you heard something that you liked, I would love for you to subscribe to the podcast and send it to somebody you care about. This podcast is a conversation that we're cultivating together. So if there's something that you would like to share, you can plant a seed of conversation using the link in the show notes. I really hope this met you right where you're at today. And I'm truly honored to be with you as we try to become the people who we were created to be. Until next time.